If you still think success belongs only to the smartest people, the richest families, or the lucky few born with powerful connections, then what you are about to hear may completely change the way you see your own life, because the truth is, most people never fail because they're weak. They fail because they never allow themselves to think beyond the limits of the life they were born into. And this is the story of a young man who discovered that the size of your future is decided by the size of your thinking. My name is Nathaniel Graves. I spent years studying the habits of wealthy entrepreneurs, powerful leaders, and men who built empires from nothing. And among all the lessons I learned, one truth appeared again and again. The people who changed their lives were the people who dared to think bigger than everyone around them. This story begins in a small industrial town in Ohio. There lived a young man named Daniel Carter. He was 22 years old, quiet, hardworking, and completely invisible to the world. His father worked exhausting shifts repairing machines in a steel factory. His mother cleaned rooms at a motel on the edge of town. Money was always short. There were nights when the electricity bill sat unpaid on the kitchen table while his parents pretended everything was fine. But Daniel noticed everything. He noticed the stress in his father's tired eyes. He noticed how his mother smiled even when she was worried. He noticed how people in his town spoke about life as if struggle was permanent. Be realistic. Don't dream too big. People like us don't become rich. Daniel heard those sentences his entire life, and slowly, without realizing it, he began to believe them. During the day he worked at a small electronics store downtown. He spent hours stacking boxes, helping customers, and watching people complain about prices while wasting money on things they did not need. At night he returned home exhausted and distracted, scrolling endlessly through videos of successful people living lives that felt impossible to reach. Private jets, luxury apartments, freedom, success. For a long time, those images made him feel small. One cold winter evening, after closing the store, Daniel sat alone outside the building while snow fell softly onto the empty streets. His manager had yelled at him earlier for making a mistake with inventory. He felt humiliated, angry, and trapped for the first time in years. A terrifying thought entered his mind. What if this is all my life will ever be? That night changed everything. When he returned home, he could not sleep. He kept staring at the ceiling while the same question repeated inside his head. Why do some people escape this life while others stay stuck forever? The next morning, before work, Daniel walked into a small used bookstore near the train station. He had never been there before. An old man stood behind the counter reading a worn notebook. He looked ordinary: gray hair, simple clothes, calm eyes. But there was something strange about his presence. He looked like a man who understood something that a state of the world had forgotten. Daniel picked up a book from a dusty shelf. The title caught his attention: The Psychology of Wealth. The old man looked up and smiled. Most people buy books hoping to escape their life, he said quietly. Very few buy books to change the way they think. Daniel stared at him. What do you mean? The old man closed his notebook slowly. Your life follows the limits of your mind. If a man secretly believes he is small, he will build a small life no matter how hard he works. Those words hit Daniel harder than he expected. He bought the book and returned home thinking about that sentence for hours. That night he began reading. He read about businessmen who started with nothing. He studied the stories of Henry Ford, Andrew Carnegie, Steve Jobs, Jeff Bezos, and Elon Musk. At first he thought these men were simply lucky, but the deeper he studied them, the more he noticed something different. They all believed in futures that other people considered impossible, while ordinary people focused on surviving. These men focused on building while others feared failure. They feared thinking too small. And slowly, Daniel realized something painful. He had spent his entire life shrinking his dreams to fit the expectations of other people. A few weeks later, Daniel returned to the bookstore. He found the old man organizing books in silence. You were right, Daniel admitted. I think small. The old man smiled faintly. Most people do. How do I change that? The old man looked directly into his eyes. Stop asking what is realistic. Start asking what is possible. Daniel never forgot those words from that day forward. Something inside him changed. He stopped wasting hours complaining about his job. He stopped spending nights watching other people succeed online. He started studying business, marketing, human psychology, sales, investing. He carried notebooks everywhere and filled them with ideas. At first nobody noticed, but inside his mind, an entirely new world was forming. One evening at work, while helping customers, Daniel noticed something interesting. People were constantly asking for affordable phone accessories that the store never stocked. The manager ignored the demand, but Daniel paid attention. That night he researched suppliers online. He discovered he could order products cheaply and sell them himself. It sounded risky. He had almost no savings. But for the first time in his life, he thought bigger than his fear. He invested his small savings and launched a tiny online store. The first month was brutal. No sales, no traffic, no success. Some nights he stared at the screen, wondering if everyone in his town had been right. Maybe dreaming big was stupid. Maybe people like him were supposed to stay small. But then he remembered something he once read about Elon Musk. If something is important enough, you do it even when the odds are against you. So he continued. He studied advertising. He learned customer psychology. He tested different ideas. Most failed, but every failure taught him something. Months passed. Then one day his phone vibrated. He made his first sale. It was only $19, but to Daniel, it felt like proof that a different life might actually be possible. He did not celebrate online. He did not tell everyone. He kept building quietly while his old friends spent weekends drinking and complaining about life. Daniel stayed home learning new skills. He began waking up at 5 in the morning. He listened to interviews with successful entrepreneurs during work breaks. He trained his mind to think bigger every single day, and slowly, reality started changing. His store grew. He expanded into new products. He learned how branding influenced emotions. He learned that people often buy feelings before they buy products. He studied wealthy businessmen obsessively. He noticed how they spoke, how they made decisions, how they protected their time. One lesson changed him deeply. Powerful people think long-term. Poor thinking chases immediate comfort. Big thinking sacrifices temporary pleasure for future freedom. By the age of 24, Daniel was earning more online than from his job, but he kept working quietly. He understood something dangerous happens when small success enters your life. To him, any people begin showing off before they build something real. Daniel refused to become one of them. Then life tested him hard. A shipment problem destroyed one of his biggest business deals. He lost nearly everything he had saved. For 2 weeks he barely slept. Fear returned stronger than ever. That old voice whispered inside him again, "You were stupid for thinking you could become more." One night he drove to an empty parking lot outside the city and sat alone in his car staring into darkness. He felt broken, but then he remembered the old man in the bookstore. Your life follows the limits of your mind. And suddenly Daniel understood something important. Big thinking is not believing everything will be easy. Big thinking is refusing to ink yourself after failure. That night he made a decision. He would rebuild smarter. He studied his mistakes carefully. He improved his systems. He learned patience. He learned emotional control. He learned that successful people are not fearless. They simply refuse to let fear make their decisions. Over the next 2 years, Daniel transformed completely. He built multiple income streams. He invested carefully. He created systems that earned money even while he slept. But the biggest change was invisible. He no longer thought like the frightened boy from the factory town. He thought like a a creator, a man with vision. One afternoon Daniel received an invitation to speak at a young entrepreneur conference in Chicago. At first he almost declined. Public speaking terrified him, but then he realized something. The old version of himself would have said no because of fear. The new version had learned to think beyond fear. When he walked onto the stage, hundreds of people stared at him. They expected confidence. They expected perfection. But Daniel began with honesty. 4 years ago, he said calmly, "I believe my future had already been decided by where I was born." The room became silent. I thought hard work alone would save me, but hard work without vision is like running in circles. You stay exhausted but never move forward. People listened carefully. Daniel continued. The greatest change in my life happened the moment I stopped thinking about survival and started thinking about pause. I build it. Why? The moment I stopped asking what small life I could tolerate and started asking what big life I could build. You could feel the energy in the room shift. Most people destroy their future before they even begin because they are afraid to think bigger than their environment. But every skyscraper was once an impossible idea. Every empire was once a dangerous dream. The audience sat frozen in silence. Then Daniel said the sentence that people would later repeat across social media thousands of times. Your mind builds the ceiling your life can never rise above. So if you want a bigger life, you must first build a bigger mind. The entire room exploded with applause, but Daniel understood something beautiful in that moment. Success was never on lie about money, it was about transformation. The real victory was becoming someone stronger than fear. Later that night, after the event ended, Daniel walked outside alone. The cold wind moved through the city streets as lights glowed across the skyline. He looked up at the towering buildings around him and smiled because years earlier, he had been a lost young man sitting outside an electronics store believing his life was already over, and now he finally understood the truth. The world changes the moment you stop thinking small. So if you're listening to this right now, feeling trapped by your circumstances, feeling invisible, feeling like your dreams are too big for the life you were born into, remember this. The people who build extraordinary lives are not always the most talented. They are the people brave enough to believe their future can become bigger than their present, and sometimes that single decision changes everything.